So I've got the base coat on, which is it's my custom mix. Unfortunately, I did this a while ago, so I don't actually know what went into this, but it's in a NATO green bottle, so I'm guessing that makes up quite a bit of it. It's basically a shade of field grey, which is XF65 from Tamiya. So I'm just making up my own mix. As you can see, that's quite close, straight out of the bottle. But it was slightly off for these early Panzer colours, so I've just kind of messed about with it really. I've done the same with the dark yellow and the brown colour. Just tried to offset it from the late war colours, which are the desert, the dark yellow and the dark green and dark brown. So I just want it to look a little bit different. So that coat's gone on very nice. I used Mr. Surfacer. No, I didn't. I used Mr. Colour self-leveling thinners, which I always like to use to get a nice smooth coat. And yeah, no problem. So I've got in quite well all around the tracks there. And again, not worry too much if I've missed an area here or there, because I can always cover that in with weathering and using the next colours. I've also sprayed the inside of these doors because I'm going to have them open like that, so they would have been the green colour. And that's about it for that. So I'm going to go on and now freehand the camouflage with the brown and the yellow, and we'll catch up then. And the next step after that will be painting the tracks. Again, just roughly, because I'm going to weather it all in. And probably not worry too much about painting the tyres. I might just go around on the rim that touches the tracks and not worry about the side, because I'm going to probably do a dust coat like that, hitting it from the side. So yeah, that's it for the painting update so far. Okay, so I've applied the second coat of paint to the base colour now, and this is, as I was explaining, a sort of custom mix of a sand yellow colour, for want of a better word. Now I've kind of gone in the splotchy kind of, well, in patches like this, as opposed to sweeping camouflage, a sweeping camouflage pattern like you might see here, for instance. So, like, this is how it's sort of written out. I did this for the Panzer 1 that I did in Spanish colours. I haven't really got any concrete evidence that it was either way, but I just like the idea of this, and then the brown that's going to follow joins into this. So wherever the brown is, it's connected to the yellow, if that makes sense. So for here, for instance, this part here is going to be brown joining into this one. There's going to be brown here, and so on, right the way across the camouflage pattern. And that seems to be a current theme of how these early Panzer camouflage patterns were done. So that's how I'm going to follow it through. I want this to kind of link in with the Panzer one that I did as well, which I've done another video on, a reveal video. So I'd like them just to match up. I've got plenty of Panzer ones, so I may try some other camo schemes in the future. So I'm liking how that went on. You probably can't see that in the camera here, but there is a little bit of overspray. But I noticed this again with the Panzer 1. I had this, and I don't know why. It must be the contrast of the colours, or however it works. It sort of fades away. You can see it when you put it down, and even getting right up close to it, it just sort of merges into the green quite nicely. And once you've got the brown on, because of the mix ratio, or the pigment, I don't know what it is, but the brown sprays a lot nicer than the yellow does. So I must have more pigment in the yellow or something like that. I thin them down the same amount, the same consistency, but I'm just thinking there's more of a sort of actual pigment count, because I can only get so tight with the yellow, but I can make it up with the brown, so I can tighten the lines, which is what I do. So I'm going to go ahead and put the brown on now. It's all by eye, so the hardest bit to get on is the yellow, because you're doing that on a blank canvas, as it were. So now the yellow's down, I just match it up with the brown and sort of move off it until I like the look of it, and then remember to make sure I actually stop and not go too far. I've left the fenders green, and I haven't put any camouflage on the actual side fenders here. Just, again, no real reason, just I feel like I'm going to leave that on this one. On the Panzer one I did cover the fenders, and I did put it on the wheels as well, and on this part I've chosen to leave that the base colour dark green for this particular vehicle. So we'll catch up once the brown's on, and then it'll all be about painting in some of these final details before I think I'm going to do a gloss coat on this one and go through the standard weathering techniques. Jumped on a little bit with this one now. I've put the brown on, as you can see, and that's completed the camouflage pattern, which I think is quite effective there. I did go and get my Panzer one, which this is meant to be lining up against, just to sort of make sure I was getting the camo pattern correct. And as you can see there, it's different, which is what I want, but it links in, so it's a similar pattern, so I'm quite happy with that. Now, with all of this, I've moved on and I've forgotten to do the air recognition marking, which is just a little square here of the white with the cross in it, so I'll do that next. I've gone ahead and painted in all of the details on this kit. So I've picked out the tools, I've painted the tracks in a dark iron colour, I just thinned the Tamiya paint and ran it around with quite a thick brush. I've painted the tops of the tyres here where it touches the tracks, and because I'm going to use dust effects on the outside, so I'm not going to worry about getting a tight edge around here. There is a bit of track colour on the front face of the wheel as well, but again, for the same reason, I'm not going to worry too much. And so next up is to paint the air recognition symbol like I mentioned, and then start on the washes. And because I'll use MRP paints for that, which will be a lacquer gloss, I don't need to then replace the gloss coat until the next stage. Here are the doors as well, which you need to remember not to forget, because they're going to be shown as well, so they need the weathering effects at the same time, and they're going to be shown open on the top there, so you can see why I'm leaving them off, so I can get to the parts underneath and then weather it all in nicely. I used Tamiya paints of my own mix for these colours, and just thinned them heavily with self-levelling thinners, and then got in there with a low air pressure and did the camouflage freehand. There was a little bit of overspray, but I had this problem in the Panzer one before, and once you start going through the filters and the weathering process, it all ties it up. As long as it's not massively over, as long as it's not tons of overspray, it's not generally a problem. Just a few odd bits here and there. So I will go ahead now with a raw umber wash, which is going to act as a filter, just to tone the colours in and bring them together. I might see if I can do a few pin washes as well without getting another gloss coat on, but if it starts to move things and merge it all together, I will just do a gloss coat just to seal the filter, and then do the rest of the oil washes on top of that. Then follow that with a matte coat, and then finish off with pastels. Okay, so we're getting to nearing the end of the build here. Now I've got the two doors here just on the top of this that I've clear coated as well. It's important when you've got separate doors to try and make sure everything gets weathered together. Now I have jumped on a bit with this and realised I've skipped a stage, so just for people that are watching, when I do my armour I usually get everything painted, gloss coat, and then do decaling. And in the previous part I'd actually gone ahead and done the filter. What I had forgotten to do whilst running on with the filter is I'd forgotten to do the air recognition markings here, and I'd also forgot to put the decals on. So not a huge problem if you do find you run along like I have and skip a step and then have to come back. Well, it's absolutely no problem painting over the oil paint here. This has gone on no problem. That's MRP lacquers, and that's as hard as nails. And I've put a gloss coat on, and now I'm going to do the decaling anyway. A bit of overkill doing a whole gloss coat just for the two decals I'm going to stick on, which are more or less these. Maybe a couple other markings might go on. So, but that's sealed in the filter coat anyway. And then I'm gonna do the decals, seal those, but just where they are. I won't do a complete gloss coat. And then I think pretty much do a pin wash and try and pick out a few details here and there. Finish off the tools, so the wood effects. So I use some burnt sienna is the oil colour that I use for the tools to give them the effect. I just streak that on and leave it as it is. I don't tend to thin it down. So yes, so decaling is next, and I've had a look. I will put a link to my website that I run for the Spanish SIG that I run, where I've done a bit of a write-up about the Panzer ones in Spain. Now, as far as I could tell from the research I did, there was only 4 of these that made it to Spain. So, obviously, if you're trying to be correct, or trying to base your model on a research subject, if there's only 4 of them, then if anyone knows about those, obviously they're specific vehicles. You can't just say it's one of the... see, if there are 100 vehicles, then you can be one of the ones that no one knows about. With all that said, there are only about 4 or 5 pictures of any of these in Spain, and they all seem to be the same one. So I'm not going to worry too much. I wanted to, as I've shown earlier, I'm going to have it joining this one and trying to be the same part of the same group. Now, I do have a set here from Star Decals, which is quite good. This is for one type of Panzer 1 in Spain. It's actually the Panzer 1B and the Modificado one, which had the larger gun put in, which is here. Now, unfortunately, when Star Decals were Bison Decals, they did a set for the Panzer 1A and the command tank. However, that seems to be out of production, and I cannot get a very good copy of the cover sheet, which is this, which has all the information. So it's quite hard to get any information on that. And that seems to be the best place I've found the research, so it is proving a little bit difficult. I've enjoyed this kit so much, and I have taken a few shortcuts, that I do intend to get another one and go to town on it. So that will be somewhere in the future. I obviously won't film that since I've done this one, but I think it warrants that, you know, especially for what I do. Putting some fenders on, taking off the front fenders, which are all things that you see in the pictures of the Spanish Panzers. You don't actually see them with any of the mudguards attached. So I think if I was to do this one again, I'd change the tool clamps, take off the fenders, certainly the front 2 fenders, and just put a few more refinements in. And obviously in this model I've forgotten to put the wheel rims on, so that's a bit of a glaring mistake. I'm happy with it, don't get me wrong. This is going to be a table filler for the shows this year, so it will certainly do the rounds, but I think I might revisit it next year, for instance, and put some of the more refined details in it. Again, if any of you are what is being hopefully affectionately termed rivet counting, so if you're a rivet counter, a little bit like I am, you will notice if these vehicles in Spain were the very early versions of this, and they did not have a ball mounted turret. So all you get in the kit is this ball mounted turret, and what it actually was, it would be quite easy to do, I think, looking at this this kit part. You would pretty much make that flush, and the hole that this has gone into, if you stuck a piece of plastic card from the rear of it, you'd have more or less what it is. It's like the hole where the ball mount is going to go is there, they just didn't put the ball mount on for whatever reason, and there's a flat piece of metal. I imagine what's actually behind this is a piece of metal with a hole in it where the gun pokes through, so like that. So you'd have this sort of effect with the hole that we've got here. The front of the hole here would be sat around it like that. So you've got the markings there. You've got the bolt heads, so they would be there. You just wouldn't have this rim piece here. I don't know if you can really see it. What we're talking about is this piece here. There would be nothing above the straight piece of the superstructure that this is sat on. So you would have those holes are there. So you would drill holes and put the bolts on, for instance, and then remove this completely, and then have the MG34 poking through a flat piece of metal or plastic card, which would be behind this actual piece here. So if you just stuck a piece of plastic card from behind, drilled a hole, stuck the MG34 through it, and put 2 small little markings little pieces of, I don't know what they would be, eye sights, I suppose. So it's just a little piece of plasticard sat on top. You would pretty much have the exact feature of the Spanish Panzer I command tanks. So there I am. If I was to be guilty of rivet counting, it doesn't get much more rivet county than that. So, but again, not many people are going to be building this kit as a Spanish version, I'm guessing. So, unless you're doing those 4 from the Spanish Civil War, all the rest were exactly as this kit comes out of the box. So that's a great thing. So I will now go ahead and put on those couple of decals that I'm going to put on, again with artistic license as has just been discussed, rather long-windedly. And then I will we'll probably check in for the final reveal, a bit of a rundown on the kit, and hopefully some nice clear pictures. Okay, so decaling's now complete on this one, so we're pushing on into the final stages. And the decals consist of a couple of recognition flags. So you've got the Spanish flag there, as we would recognise it, and 2 on the back there, as well as the tank group symbol, which is used on all the Spanish Panzers. So that's that. So this has now had a final gloss coat, and the next thing is just to use a few sort of different colours of oil washes. I might do some fading on the top here. Oh, I've knocked that light off again. Look, I keep doing that. I might leave that one off until we're done. And so yeah, some washes on here just to give some sort of streaking effects and some fading, and also a pin wash. And then I'll matte everything down and then start using pigments and probably spray a light sandy colour over here just to give a kind of dusty feel. And then we're pretty much finished with the build. It's pushed on a little bit with this one now. I've done some extra oil washes all along here. Fixed the doors here on the top, and now we're pretty much ready for a final matte coat, and then starting to do dust effects on the side there. And you may also notice that I've got a box of figures here of French tankers, which is appropriate, or not. But I've used these, if I zoom in a little bit, so I've gone for these from Verlinden because certainly this figure has the right kind of look. This one I'm going to use for a Republican tank, a BT5 that I'm doing, where I'm using a picture as reference, and the chap looks exactly like that, actually. Obviously the heads are wrong. He is wearing a beret, so I might be able to use that head, I'm not sure. But generally this is pretty much what the nationalist tank forces look like. Pretty informal as it goes, because they weren't German, they were Spanish. During the later periods of the war, they tended to have a leather jacket, much like this, and I'm only going to probably show it that much. And I've also got a set of heads here, which, if you can see there, does have Spanish on there, and this is basically some generic heads with berets, and so that should change them out if I need to. I need them for the other figure anyway, where he's got the French tanker helmet on. So I'll be using those to try and liven this up, and hopefully it should be relatively straightforward. This is what you get in the bag. So got a whole jumble of resin there, as you can see. Very nicely done. It is Verlinden, so it's not, you know, they pretty much know what they're doing. And that should give you an idea of the detail. Now you've got a scarf, and you can see the jacket looks pretty sharp, so that's good. So I'll go ahead and get these together now. Right, so I'm progressing nicely along with this little tank, and the figures are coming on quite nicely. This is just another figure from the set, which I'm going to use on the BT5, which is a video I've put up recently. So we'll ignore that one for the time being. So everything is pretty much coming together. I think you can see here what I'm intending. So there's a little diorama scene. It's more just a base than a diorama. So I'm I'm contemplating with trying to get do frost effects on here, because although this is going to be Spain, the figure actually is wearing a scarf, so obviously it's not the summer, but I imagine it gets quite cold in the desert in the winter. Certainly from some of the books I've read about the period, the chaps are very cold in certain periods of the war, so I may leave it as it is and just sort of give the idea of it being a frosty morning. So just to remind you, this is what we're sort of going for here. Something like that. I'm just going to have the chap sat there looking off. I was planning on doing some vegetation, but I think I'm going to leave it. I think I'm happy with the base. I've just painted it a couple of earth colours. This is just air drying clay in here. So pretty much on the finish line here. So I haven't shown you my painting process for figures, simply because I don't feel as though it's good enough. You may look at this and say it's fine, and I'm happy with the result, but the point, I didn't want to kind of do a tutorial on painting figures, because I don't think I'm the best person for that by a long way. Figure painting is very much, is almost, if anything in modelling is an art form, figure painting is, and there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube, so it's probably better to look at one of those as opposed to picking up some of my bad techniques and using them. But with all that said, we'll have a look at the head here, which is pretty much the main thing you need to get right. So if I zoom in, now if I try and hold this still and keep it in focus, there you can hopefully see the head, which I think looks pretty good. It's as close as I'm going to ever really get to where I want to be. And all I did there was really with shade effects underneath the skin. So it's basic stuff. It's just Tamiya flesh colour as a base, and then I use some Vallejo lighter flesh colours just to give some highlights. I also use a Citadel flesh wash, which is a very old one. I'm not sure if they do that anymore. It's the I'll see if I can grab it. It's been around the block a while. There you go. There's flesh wash. As you can see, it's absolutely tons of it in there still. I've had this, I don't know, probably 15 years. So I'm not sure if they make that specific one, but they certainly have something like it. I don't know why I'm putting my hand here. The camera doesn't focus on its own, so it's where it is. So yeah, I'm happy with that, and that's the hard bit. So now that's done, just on to the finishing touches now. So we've got the side of the tank I need to weather, so it's been matted down, and what I'm going to probably do here is use some of the flat earth colour that I've used here just as a dust coat, and then just work over with pigments. Obviously I'm trying to hide, this is no, oh hang on, I'm going to lose the figure. So it's no big thing. Basically, I'm trying to hide the fact that these tyre bits are still green and I haven't put the rims on. So I'm going to cover it in a heavy dust coat. Now, I've painted the black on the road wheels that will be exposed. So the idea is if you just go with a nice flat face, just go spray like that, not from an angle, just as if it's hitting it from the side, if it's dusting backwards. That should give a bit of a natural look. And then it's just a matter of painting the inner faces of these lights here. Silver. The two on the edges here don't have lenses, so I'll just use a bit of PVA there. We've all got a lens for this one, and that is going to finish off the build. So when we check in next, that's going to be a talk down and final reveal. So here's the final reveal video for the SDK 265 Panzer 1B command tank. Now, as you can see, I've put it on a little base here, which is just a photo frame where I've put a bit of air drying clay inside to try and create some earth effects, and I've got a figure in there as well. I'll see if I can zoom in there, so you might be able to get an idea of how the little guy's looking. Nothing special, you know, basic figure techniques. I'm certainly no expert as far as that's concerned. And so hopefully that sets the scene. It shows you the size of the tank. It's not very big. It's a very small crew. I think it was just a 3-man crew. Maybe even 2-man. I'm not sure. I'd have to check on that. I'm not sure you'd fit 3 men in there, actually, looking at it. So lovely build, as you will have seen. It's been no problem. The kit's gone together very nicely, just like most Dragon kits do of this type. Basic weathering is just dusting some Tamiya acrylic, the same colour as the earth, along the side of the running gear, and then using pigments to try and tone all of that in and blend it together. And yeah, and that's about it really. I'm very happy with how it's turned out. A little bit of a pain that I lost the fender at the back there, but you know, we'll have to live with that. And so hopefully you enjoyed the build. Something a little bit different for the armour guys. Don't see a lot of Spanish Civil War armour out there, I must say. So I'm looking to change that a little bit. And yeah. And so yeah, I hope you enjoyed the build and join along with the next one. And now I'll leave you with a few pictures of this to try and give you a little bit of detail.